Hello there, I'm Dr. Michelle Alden, and I'm here today to talk to you about raising really challenging kids and how to build a bridge from where you are now to better behaviors. And I just want to welcome you to this YouTube channel, Parenting Challenging Kids. If you haven't found me before, I'm glad you found me today. Please subscribe and look at all the past videos. There are almost any question that you have. There's different videos about it, and I keep making more. I hope that you get a lot of help, and let me know if there's more that you want to hear, or if you have questions, or if you're like, what about this? I have a couple different ways that you can do that. One is right in this channel, you can leave questions. If you want to get one-on-one coaching with me, you can contact me at parentingchallengingkids.com, and I can get you set up with a free consultation, and we can go from there. Today, I'm going to be talking about some different questions that that parents have, and it's really interesting to me as the school year is getting started, just the rise that we see in kids' behaviors, but also it's like summer's kind of slowing down enough that maybe you as a parent are like, okay, I've got to figure out what to do because this was terrible, or this worked, or this didn't work. And so, you know, if questions are coming up for you, or problems, or you're finally able to say, I need to do something to help me, and where can I find a parent coach, then you've come to the right place. Again, feel free to look at all those other videos with different questions that are answered. And I can always answer ones over because sometimes things change a little bit. Like I was just reading a statistic that said that now it's 1 in 4, conservatively maybe 1 in 7, but 1 in 4 kids that have a mental health diagnosis. And that can be anything from ADHD to, you know, anxiety, depression, you know, and with ADHD, a lot of times comes oppositional defiance and different conduct disorders, because there's some symptoms of this that plays out, and then that kind of creates more, and it's a snowball effect of things that don't seem to be working. And no matter how much medication your kids are on, or finding the right cocktail, it just is can be really challenging, and it kind of shifts and changes. And so it's just nice to have some help ongoing all the time. So today there were several questions that came to me, and so I thought I would just spend some time answering those questions. I think they kind of fit together, but it may seem a little bit random, so you might, you know, get some answers on one that don't necessarily seem to tie in. But in general, I have a kind of a philosophy that seems to cover a lot of different things. So one of the questions that came to me this week was, what if your child grabs something or takes something that's yours or somebody else's, and they won't give it back to you? And I see this with kids all ages. I mean, it's very much like a toddler behavior, right? Like a child grabs something, a toy from another toy, and then we sometimes as adults will grab it back and tell them to share and not to grab. And in families, I see this all the time. And with older kids, it may be grabbing papers that you had, grabbing, you know, something from another child that belongs to another child. And so I think it has to be handled really carefully, especially if they're grabbing things, taking things with the intent to tear it up, break it, not give it back. So, and it causes, there's something about somebody grabbing something that's yours, or maybe even just touching stuff that's yours, that can set people on edge, right? And we do it to our kids, and it sets them on edge as well. So it's a little bit of a two-way street, but not exactly. So I tell parents, you know, that we don't want to go into their space and take their things, but on the other hand, you are the adult, and you do have stewardship over your children and over their things. So, but as far as taking things out of their hands, grabbing things out of their hands, that's where I want to really caution you. I have worked with several parents, and maybe you're one of them, or maybe this has happened to you, where when a child turns violent and aggressive, it's usually because something's and it usually has to do with electronics being turned off or taken away from them in a really abrupt way. Even though you may have felt like I gave them all these warnings. I kept waiting and they wouldn't do it. So finally I just reached and grabbed it out of their hands, and then they get really, really hurt. Not the child usually, but you as an adult. So I give you that caution. We want to really teach our kids about space and boundaries. And I feel like grabbing things, and this is going to tie into another question where somebody asked, what do I do about kind of space and boundaries? My child seems to, whenever I sit down and try to relax, they're like right on me. But when I ask them for something or a hug or it's appropriate, it feels like they're not. And I see this too when you're trying to talk with another adult and your child is climbing all over you or right in front of you or comes in and interrupts it. That all to me has to do with space and boundaries. And I think it has to do with the way their brain is functioning. And I think that it's skills that we have to teach. And I think they are very much tied together. So I'm going to talk about this for a bit. So grabbing something, if your child, grabs something that is yours, especially if they're angry and they grab it and they, take off with it, or they're threatening to rip it, your reaction to that can cause a lot of input for your child that doesn't make it better. So I want to encourage you to respond rather than react. And you have to talk to yourself about this and really work through this yourself, because it's so natural if someone takes something for us to have this reaction and to want to grab it back. And so I want you to think about it in terms of, this is something I've learned about stabilizing behavior. If a child were to do something and physically grab you, and let's say they, grabbed your hair, then our first instinct is to pull away or to try to, pull away because it hurts. But what you want to do is you want to stabilize them. So in my training, I've been taught that you stabilize that point of contact. And I've been thinking about this a lot with our kids, that whether they're grabbing you or grabbing something else, our first thing that we want to do is to kind of stabilize. And in order to stabilize, you have to know how to stabilize yourself. So it may involve taking a deep breath. It may involve just pausing for a moment, getting your brain to stop, firing, and getting your mouth to stop yelling and to stop, demanding for it back. Because as soon as you put a demand on a child, if you don't have a way that you're going to follow through with that, and it's in the heat of the moment, then you're going to see that demand avoidance is what it technically is called, but really it's kind of human nature that now I'm in a power struggle and I'm really going to fight. So, so if they grabbed your phone or they grabbed a paper that was important to you, you don't want to have this reaction that's going to push them further to do more to keep kind of their heightened sense, right? They may rip it, or they may, take the phone. They may throw it. They may, flush it down the toilet. But most likely they're gonna start to do something on it. So just know that you have time. It's not an emergency. Now, if they grab a weapon, they grab a knife, something like that, that's a different part than what I'm talking about here. But I'm not talking about grabbing something with the intent to harm you with it. They're trying to get a reaction in a different way. Maybe we'll talk about when kids are really aggressive and violent later, or in a different video. But for now, I'm just talking about something they grab that's yours, or something they grab from someone else. So stop yourself from yelling, saying give that back, and take that pause. And then so a lot of times kids will take something and run with it, like go to their room, especially if it's like a device. Sometimes they'll do it, they'll just flop down on the couch. So I've found that standing, very close to the child, as close as is safe, is a good idea, but make sure that you're calm enough to do that first. So you're gonna, let's say they grab something, they go into their room, and you're just gonna go and wait. And and at first I just, like I said, I give them a little bit of space because the heat of the moment. I was working with a child yesterday that grabbed something that belonged to someone else, and the other person starts, you know, having this big reaction, you know, that it's mine, make him, give it to me, grab it from him, you know, all these demands, right? And the parents are just like, what do I do? And I said, you know, let's just, you know, give him a second. He wasn't doing anything to hurt it, but when you put that pressure on a child, then that's when more might happen. So just be cautious. If it's an electronic device like a phone or an iPad, I like to stay very close to the child, and then you're not going to talk. I mean, you may say, you know, that's not yours. Please give that back to me. And I recommend putting your hand out and just waiting. Sometimes you might have to wait by them. I found too that it's very difficult for parents to just wait. You want to talk, you want to convince them, you want to bribe them, you want to be like, if you give me my phone back, then we can go do blah, 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 and all this stuff, right? Just wait, and really you just need to be staring at them. I don't know how many kids I've done this with of all different ages, and typically after a bit, they're just like, what? You know, stop staring at me, get off my back, or leave me alone. I'm not saying anything, just watching them. And so like yesterday with the thing that this kid had grabbed, I let him, he went to his room, you know, it was like, you can tell like the chase is on, right? Like his heart's racing. He's got this thing, you know, his sibling is wanting, and then finally he goes into his room, which to me is like, okay, we're gonna calm down now. And so I just had the other child, you know, like, I got this, like, they're not going to get it by their demands. It's going to end up being a big fight, right? So I just waited. He had his door open, and I just said, hey, I just wanted to let you know that I'm just waiting for you. And then I actually talked to him about the object for a while and just asked, like, you know, what they were, what it was, and what it was for, and just kind of acted pretty nonchalant about it. I'm not a parent of this child, so I can talk to them a little bit about it, where if you were a parent doing it, I would just have you wait. And then sometimes you can say like, hey, it's time for us to go play a game, but we can't do that till you give that back, you know, something like that. But I just kind of waited, and I said, you know, because his thing is like, you know, she doesn't use this anyway. And I said, yeah, you know, I get that, but you know how you feel when it's yours and somebody else takes it. So whether she uses it or not, it's still not yours. But if you really wanted it, I bet you could probably get some, you know, get some of those too. And so we just kind of were, and then finally he took them off, and he was just kind of looking at them. And I said, you want to give those to me now? And he put them in my hand. And then I just kind of looked at him for a while and just stayed there, because I really didn't want to get his blood pressure going again, right? I didn't want to get his heart racing again. So I was just being kind of slow about it. And I was like, thanks for handing those to me. And then he started doing something else completely different. And I said, I'll be back in just a minute. And I went and gave those to the other sibling. And it was all taken care of really within 15 minutes. Where I think if we would have had a big blowout, it would have been different. If your children are younger, you may have been in the habit of they grab something, you grab something from them, and then you give it back to that person. But as your child gets older, it's time to change that. Maybe that worked when they were 2. I think there's better ways to teach it. If your child is really young, you still want to teach them to hand it to you or to give that back to the person. And I tell kids all the time, because I bring things to the home, games, you know, different things that we do. And if a child takes something that's mine or touches it, or what is this, you know, I'm like, oh, that's not yours, please don't touch. And just create some of those boundaries. If you're going around your house, you're saying like, no, don't touch, don't stop, don't, you're kind of missing the point of helping them to know how to navigate through that and to respect the boundaries and stuff like that. If they're playing with someone else and they break something, then talk to your child about like, what can we do to make that right? And it's like, oh, well, all of his toys are broken anyway, and well, it doesn't matter. It's like, it does matter though. Like, we don't want our friends coming over here and breaking things. So we need to go get them a new one of that and you know, make it right. So we're teaching the whole concept of personal belongings, personal space, all of that. So, and it's the same thing with your personal space. I have a lot of kids that, and whether they have attachment disorder or they just have sensory needs, there's a really thin line between aggression and that sensory need for touch. And I find, especially with a lot of boys, that they get those sensory needs met by being more aggressive. And you kind of see it in like junior high age kids will kind of like bump each other. Boys in particular, even as they get older, you know, that's why they may wrestle, you know, things like that. So they need that input. And I think it's fine to have it, but they also need to know the boundaries of it, right? So as my kids got older, wrestling with me wasn't a great idea. But there was other things that we could do. We might have a pillow fight, but there was still boundaries on it. You know, if you see a child, you know, that you have them give you a high five and they hit really, really hard with that high five, you can teach like, you know, I want a high five, but I don't want you to hurt me. Let's try that again and be softer. And kind of teach them that, because a lot of kids, especially with ADHD, they don't really know how hard or how soft to do things. So even when they're, you know, hugging the cat or hugging you, or, you know, it's like they may not have the intent to hurt you. Maybe they do because they like the reactions. So really work on your reactions to that. But we're having to teach them how hard or how soft to do things. I think it's a good idea with space that they can't just come and flop on you, that especially if they have some issues with this, that you kind of have to start to teach. It's almost a carryover from being a toddler and just, you know, not really having a separation between me and my mom or my caregivers. But as they get older, it can be really, really annoying, and it can also hurt you. Like I've seen kids, you know, jump on their grandmother's back, you know, just different things. And so it's like, we just need to teach them to ask, like, or if we see that they're standing there and they're about ready to do something, be like, oh, did you need a hug? Did you need a squeeze? Knowing that they need that input, like have time in your day where it's like, you know, we used to joke around at my house when my kids were younger, when they would have like bad attitudes or whatever. I was like, do you just need somebody to sit on you? And I would just like sit on them, literally, like not in any kind of safety hold or anything like that, but just, you know, sit down on them while they were sitting, and you kind of lean back. But I would let them know, like I wouldn't just, you know, grab them and do that. And I think that's the other thing too, as parents. Your kids are small, you may be used to just kind of manhandling them, or where they are having a fit or whatever, you just pick them up and you move them. But as they get older, you know, really we want to start helping them to be compliant, learning that even when they're upset or they're frustrated, that they can come sit, that they can get themselves calm. And again, it's about learning to stabilize them rather than just moving them. I have families I've worked with where, especially it seems like it happens a lot with multiple kids, but even just with single kids, it's like they're still toddlers and you're still trying to move them around, and they've been aggressive. So be careful about getting into their 3 feet, about you reaching in and grabbing things from them, but grabbing them personally and kind of manhandling them. But really what we want is that we want them to be low enough on our mountain of escalation that we can give them a reasonable choice. And the choice may be, you can play this game with us, or we can go take a break. You know, it's not like, what do you want to do? I can tell you're getting upset. It's helping them to get stabilized. So you can say, I know you're getting really upset. Let's take a break. I'm just going to hold you for a minute, and you know, and it may take them a little bit to get calm enough for you to be able to just give them a squeeze, to be able to help them to get calm. If you're basing everything on how they're reacting, you're not going to reach that place where you actually bring their levels down. A lot of times I see families that will like, you know, I wanted to just sit with them, but then they told me they were fine and they didn't need that. And it's like, but you have to observe that. What are you feeling? What are you dealing with, you know, all afternoon that can help you to make that decision to say, we need to take a break here, and we need to just have some time for me to just cuddle with you. It's instead of leaving it all up to them, because when you're escalated, when they're almost outside of their thinking part of their brain, and then we're asking them to think about whether they need a hug or not, it's very challenging. Like, there are times you need to just say, like, this is what we're going to do to bring them kind of back to their center. And for your kids, I want them to start to notice what they need. So if you can notice, like, hey, they came home from school and they've just been kind of off all afternoon and they're just jumping from one thing to the next, then you know that they need to get stabilized. You don't need to leave it up to them to figure out that they need to get stabilized. You need to help them to kind of get stabilized, and then we can try to move forward. And so with them, like, I think that when I start to see the breakthrough is when a child doesn't just jump on a parent or get right in their space, but they kind of wait, and then you can notice, like, oh, did you want a hug? Or if they're already grabbing onto you and hugging, you can say, I really want to give you a hug, and spend some time with you. Give me 5 more minutes, and help them to see that they can wait, and that you'll come back to that, and then you can give your full attention to it. I think sometimes too, especially see this with moms, it's like the kids are constantly pulling at you, and so they're not really getting what they really need from you, and yet they're getting lots of attention, right? But they're kind of dragging it out of you, where sometimes if you can just be like, I need 5 minutes, and then I can do this. Let me finish. You know, I had a grandmother that was asking me, what do I do when I'm reading a book, and anytime I sit down, it's like he's just got to be right there, and he's on me, and he's, you know, touching my book, and he's like trying to get the book away from me, you know, and the rest of the time when I'm ready, like, he's not. And I'm like, that's where, you know, just creating a little bit of that space is good. You're not gonna lose your connection with your child, because that demanding and taking from you is not good connection. But being able to say, oh, let me finish my reading. While you're waiting, you can read a book, or you can just sit here quietly, and then I can do that with you. So same thing with interrupting, like 1 minute, you know, and then I can address your need. We want to teach our kids that delayed gratification. They are not the center of the universe, and just because they showed up, now everything has to stop. But we also can't just turn our back on it, because we know that our kids, the ones that you have and the ones I work with, will do things that will definitely demand immediate crisis type attention. So it's looking at it, giving, you know, that directive, but also, you know, kind of having them wait and not have to be so impulsive about it. There are times when you do have to be impulsive, and this is why I'm kind of light on making it a two-way street. There are times when you as an adult do have to go into their 3 feet and take control of the situation, especially if they're not able to make a good decision. If you're telling them to sit down rather than jumping up and down on the couch, and they can't do that, you may have to go help them to go sit on the couch, depending on their age, right? If you have a 12-year-old that's jumping up and down on the couch, that's a lot different than if you have a 3 or 4-year-old jumping up and down on the couch. So if you have a 12-year-old, that's a whole different thing. You're not going to reach in and get hurt by trying to grab them and make them do something. It's not going to be done by force. You're going to have to redirect them to something else. So those are just a couple of the questions this week. I don't have time for more today, but if you have more, or if some of these sparked more questions, I would love to hear what questions you have, and we'll just keep having these conversations about what to do about these challenging behaviors. Please know that you can join the Playroom, which is our online parent support group, where you get coaching individually as well. So you come to the group, and then you get to hear other people's questions or situations, or this is what happened this week, and then I can individually coach you, and if it's a question you have, or you can just listen and learn so much from other people's questions, just like we did this week. So I will see you again next week.